Hello everyone, Sandrak here. So in today's video, I want to go over the top 10 used teams in the Spiral Abyss to hopefully help you get more stars in the Spiral Abyss if you're currently having difficulties. For the last 5 teams, so team 6 to team 10, it is not ranked in any specific order, but for teams 1 to team 5, they are ranked by their usage in the Spiral Abyss. The data was provided to another person by about 10,000 users who have full clear Spiral Abyss 36 stars, so that's where I'm getting the data from. So with that said, let's get started. The first team I would like to recommend, which is number 10 on the list, is Reverse Smelt Team. It essentially works when you apply Cryo first and use Pyro to reverse smelt. It is called reverse smelt because you're applying Cryo first instead of Pyro first. This time you deal 1.5 times damage as opposed to the other way around. The main character you need for this team is 1 Cryo DPS and 2 Pyro characters. Make sure that you can apply Pyro fast enough, and at the same time, generally speaking, you need another Cryo character to also apply Cryo as fast as possible. Currently, the best possible configuration for this team is Rosaria, Shanling, Shenhe, and Bennett, but as you've seen, I put up here, any characters to the leftmost is the most ideal character, and any character to the right of them are characters you can potentially substitute in for that spot. So for example, you can use Chongying, Clay, Jin, and Bennett. It will also work as well, but it will not be at the full power of the original team. Technically, Gangyu works better than Rosaria because Gangyu is pretty much the tier S character, the only tier S character for reverse smelt at the moment. But given that Gangyu is very good in some of the other comps, that's why she is listed second here. This was originally designed for a team specifically for Rosaria to be able to build around. And the main cost for this team is you're sticking Shanling and Bennett, 2 of the best 4 stars onto this team, which means on the other side you have to figure out something else to run. Moving on to the ninth team, which is the physical damage team. This team has not been used in Abyss quite a bit, but all the Eula mains out there can definitely utilize this team. Essentially, the main physical DPS is going to be Eula or Razor. The Electro side, because for physical DPS, Superconduct, which is Electro plus Cryo, decreases physical resistance. So for the Electro side of things, if you're really wasteful, you can use Raiden Shogun because she's better in other teams. But if you want a better option that is more cost efficient, Fischl is the best one for the job, and if you don't have Fischl build, Beidou can do the work, but Beidou applies Electro kind of slow, but she will work in sync with the cooldown of Superconduct, so you'll have Superconduct active all the time. As for the Cryo side of things, of course, Rosaria is the best one because she applies Cryo off-field with her Q. Other than that, Diona works as for applying Cryo because you're not looking for too much damage on the Cryo applying side of things. The other good thing for Diona is she also provides healing and shielding needed. And of course, if you don't have any of these 2 built, Kaya is actually a decent option here as well. Although Kaya does suffer from ICD, so don't make him the main DPS, just make him the Cryo application. And for the last one, since you don't really care about Geo messing up stuff here, so you can add Geo or anemo characters in the last spot. Of course, Zhongli is the safest one for shielding purposes. If you already have Diona on the team, you can try someone like Jin to increase the attack, but for the last to increase the healing. But for the last spot, you can only use Geo or anemo character because the addition of any other character, any other element would mess up the Superconduct here. Moving on to the third team, which I would recommend, is Mono-Electro Team. This team focuses on applying Electro only. Even though we see Bennett here, the main purpose of Bennett is to do the Q, which gives damage buff to Sarah and Raiden, and Sarah can further buff Raiden. So that's sort of how this team do damage. And Kazuha here is supposed to swirl Electro for more damage boost. If you are looking for a team for Yai Miko, this team can actually swap in Yai Miko, but the problem is that once you swap in Yai Miko, Yai becomes the main DPS and Raiden has to support her to give her enough energy, whereas if you do Raiden and Sarah, Sarah is the support and Raiden is the main DPS. Moving on to the fourth team, which is the ADC team, what I like to call. The normal terminology for this is a normal attacking team. So this team involves 2 of the best and 2 of the only best normal attack DPS right now, Kamisato Ayato and yoimiya. Rinjin is definitely recommended for this team because she buffs normal attack by so much. If you don't have Rinjin, Xingqiu is an acceptable substitution. The third spot is the AoE. The third spot is the crowd control one, so Venti if you are needing a lot of control, or Kazuha can work as well. And finally, the last spot, you don't really care about element here since you're just doing normal attacking, so Zhongli, Jin, and Diona all can work. Moving on to the number 6 spot, which is the Taser team. The Chinese translation is Vow Legacy. Moving on to the number 16, which is the Taser team. The Chinese name is Vow Legacy. It is essentially using the electro charged reaction, which is Hydro plus Electro, to do large AoE electro damages around. So there are 2 ways to do this team. The first one is of course with Yoimiya and Raiden, and in that case you should use Kokomi as your Hydro character to apply Hydro and also do healing. Here Kazuha is highly recommended, but if you don't have Kazuha, Sucrose can work as well because both of them buffs damage, although Sucrose does this through Elemental Mastery. It's slightly different and less it yields less results, but Sucrose definitely work as well. The second route is of course the old Taser team, which is where the name comes from. It's Childe's Vow Legacy form. So you have Childe as the main DPS, Beidou and Fischl as the support for electro side of things. Fischl is also here to sub as a battery for Beidou, and finally Sucrose or Kazuha to slot in that slot. The second Vow Legacy side of things, you do not have any healer or anyone who can basically shield you except Beidou's parry, so you do have to be very careful there. And finally, if you really don't have any Hydro character and you want to play this team, Barbara can work as well. Now moving on to the top 5 teams, I'm going to be listing their Chinese names around as well, just to make sure that anyone who has heard of them knows that this is the team that I'm referring to. And for these 5 teams, there are way less substitutions, so please be aware that for some of these, if there's no substitutions, you do have to use the actual characters in the game to sort of pull off the team. So the first one is Childe Vaporize comp. The Chinese name is Wanda Guoji. So for the comp, essentially Childe is the main DPS here. Sucrose again, but better version is Kazuha for damage boost, and Shenlin and Bennett for the Vaporize comp side of things. This team is very strong because double pyro. Shenlin and Bennett is basically the 2 best pyro units in game right now in terms of 4-star level, and Kazuha is basically the best anemo unit in game right now. Together with Childe, this is a very strong comp. Moving on to number 4, which is Hu Tao standard comp in China, which is basically Hu Tao plus Xingqiu for Vaporize damage and Zhongli there to shield, so Hu Tao can spam charge attack without getting stopped ever. In this Abyss, which is 2.6, Chongyun is used for shield popping purposes, but normally the 4th spot is a very free spot that you can just fly in whoever you want. And if you really don't have Zhongli and you want to play this comp, Beidou can work, but the shield is going to be much weaker. Moving on to the 3rd comp, which is the Ayaka Prema-Freeze comp, or the Chinese version. The old version is called Shinratensei. The newer, this is the updated version. So it involves Ayaka and Shenhe for damage boost for Ayaka, Kazuha for crowd control purposes, and finally Kokomi for healing and apply Hydro, which causes perma-freeze. So this team is very good in the Abyss currently, and I believe personally this is what MiHoYo is going to nerf the hardest in upcoming Abysses. And finally, a different version for this team that can work, Ganyu can substitute Ayaka for the crowd DPS. Rosaria is basically a slightly worse version of Shenhe, so those 2 are swappable. Venti, if you need more crowd control instead of damage boost, you can use that because this team's main reaction is freezing, which doesn't get much damage. So Kazuha's damage boost is not working too well here. And finally, Barbara can substitute Kokomi if you're really in a hurry. Moving on to the number 2 team, which most people should know about, it's the Morgana comp, except this one is the Venti Variation. Now Morgana is basically the name put together for Morgana. The Mor part is for Mona, Gon part is for Ganyu, and Na part is for Diona. So Ganyu, Mona, and Diona is the standard comp for perma-freeze before Ayaka came into the game, and normally Venti is used for crowd control purposes, although the 4th one is a free slot that you can slot in. Anyone other than Electro and Pyro will work there, and Geo of course, because that also causes shatter. But currently the other variation for this comp is you can swap in Ayaka as the crowd DPS instead of Ganyu. Mona has to stay there for the nuke purposes to boost damage. Kazuha can swap in Venti, same with Sucrose, and Diona has to stay for the shielding and healing purposes because she's the only crowd character who can do so. And finally, the #1 ranked team in all of Spiral Abyss, and personally also one of my favorite teams, is called Raiden National. Now, if you don't know, the original national team was Chongyun, Xinchu, Shenling, and Bennett. It's the most free-to-play team, which is all 4 stars, and it works extremely well in the Abyss. Essentially, just spam everyone, and plus Chongyun applies crowd onto all the 3 other one's normal attacks, so you're causing a gajillion reactions at the same time. Now, with the introduction of Raiden Shogun, this team became even better because Raiden works better with these 3, and this team now also has a main DPS you can work off of. So with that said, if you don't have Raiden Shogun, national team, the old national team, which is Chongyun, Xinchu, Bennett, and Shenling, is one of the best in the game also currently, and if you do have that, Raiden is also going to bring a huge damage boost to this team, and this team currently works very well in the first half of Abyss for pretty much 4.9 to 4.12, and I highly recommend if you have these characters, build them and use this team in the Spiral Abyss. Now finally, for those more niche players out there, I do have 2 honorary mentions that are not meta elements. So the first one is Mono-Geo comp, which is an all Geo comp. So for this one, essentially you need at least 3 Geo characters. One that has to be Goro. The main DPS, I would highly recommend running Ito. Also Ningguang can work, but again, I would highly recommend running Ito. For the shielding spot, Albedo can work. I would highly recommend running Zhongli for more shielding, but again, Albedo can work because this is a Mono-Geo team, so you can pick up shield constantly. And finally, for the last slot, generally speaking, I would recommend, unless you need to pop a specific element, run 4 Geo to maximize Goro's effectiveness, but other than that, you can run anyone that pops a shield or Bennett for damage boost, Jin for healing, Kazuha for crowd control, Venti for crowd control. The last spot is pretty free. And finally, Xiao's honorary team, which honorable mention for Xiao's current team, which is double 2 Geo, 2 anemo. So Xiao is normally the main DPS for Xiao's team. Hopefully that makes sense. Zhongli is generally run with Xiao, so he doesn't get interrupted once his Q starts. Jin is normally run, so you can Jin's Q into Xiao's Q to cancel out damage, and also this way Xiao can get full health at the whole time. Venti can be run if you need crowd control. And finally, Albedo or Ningguang is the 4th slot. Depending on what you have, Albedo is generally the better option, but Ningguang can use him as a swappable burst spammer as well. So that's all I have for 10, technically 12 teams you can use in the Spiral Abyss. Let me know in the comments below what teams you use in the Spiral Abyss and how do you find them. Thank you very much for watching and have a nice day.